Hello everyone, welcome to the Average Angler's Shed. Today we're looking at changing the bearings in a Preston Shuttle. Now I know those regular viewers to my channel might be saying, oh John, I didn't think you had a Preston Shuttle. Well, I didn't until the other week when I just bought one second hand off Facebook Marketplace. I got a good little deal, 45 quid, so I thought why not, and I might be able to do some videos like this one for the channel, and there might be some more in the pipeline. I don't know what I'm going to do yet. So let's get straight on to changing the bearings in a Preston Shuttle. Here's the shuttle in my shed upside down on top of me containers. As you can see, this is a four-wheel shuttle, and we've got the two wheels at the back, which come with an axle, and the two wheels at the front, which are just stub shafts. So what I'm going to do is I'll show you how to do that one, and I'll show you how to do the back ones, because obviously the front one's just the same thing twice. The back one, slightly a bit more faffing about because it's an axle. Not a big deal though. Let me show you. Just for simplicity, what we'll do is we'll just take that, loosen that wheel off there, and we'll just take that off and take it over to the vise. Right, I've got it all set up in the vise. And then all I'm going to do, 13mm socket, undo it. It's a little bit loose because I've already undone it. Loosen that off, and it just slides off. Then we can forget about that. We can put this on the table here, and I'll set you up on the table so you can see what we're doing. What you've got in here is a bearing on this side and a bearing on this side, and you've got to get them out. And in order to do that, it's best to get something like this, like a little thin drive. What you've got to try and do is get in and put the drift, as I would call it, in at an angle so that it catches the bearing at the bottom, just on the inside race. So you've got the inner race and the outer race of the bearing. You want to be on this race on the bottom bearing, and then you can strike it with a hammer. But obviously we ain't got much room here, so what will happen is, let's see, I'll start striking it, and then you have to swap sides. What you might find happens is it's going to come out this one really easily, so prove me a liar. But what you might find sometimes is that it won't come out because you ain't got enough clearance. You might have to put it on something hard. I'll sometimes put it on open my vise up and put it on my vise like that and drive it through. But let's just see. Once you've got the back off, you'll find there's like a washer sitting in there like that's fell out. What you can do is pull him out of the way. He's important, don't lose him, and then you can get to the back of the other bearing, which is actually a washer. So when I say, you know, you're hitting the back of the other bearing, actually you're hitting the back of a washer lock. So it sits like that, so you can't damage it too much anyway. And then again, just hit each side one at a time. Sorry if you're bouncing around a bit because you are attached to the table that I'm working on. And he's out. It's as simple as that. These have got two washers in. That's because I've been messing about with something off camera, and I put those in. But how they actually come is one. So if you have a look inside, you see there's some little legs. That's the stop. So you keep these washers because when they go in there, that's what they got it caught. Look at that. Drop that in there another 100 times, that won't happen. That's the stop. That washer becomes the physical stop, so that you push the bearing all the way down to that, so you know that you're in the right place. And then you put the other washer on the other side as well. So let's have a little talk about bearings before we move on, because I'm a little bit controversial here. This is the bearing that you need to replace, and these are 6000 ZZ bearings, they're called. You can see it's not spinning particularly well. It feels very lumpy. It's a bit rusty, and that's the bearing that you can replace them with, or you should replace them with, because that's what Preston put in them. I am not replacing them with those because I don't believe that this is the right bearing. So bear with me a second. I am replacing mine with 6000 2RSs. Now RS stands for rubber seal. So what's the difference? Well, the difference is this one's got a rubber seal and that one's got a metal shield. Now notice the subtle difference between shield. This is got a metal shield on it. This has got a rubber seal on it. The rubber seal will stop water, it will stop dust, it will stop everything from getting in there. The metal shield protects against impact and things like that. So, but it doesn't protect against water, liquid ingress, fine dusts, Hopefully, let me just move that across to there so you can see that hopefully. So yeah, you've got the metal shield and the rubber, but because it's 6000 series bearing, it's dimensionally identical. The inside will be identical, same the balls, same races, same tolerances, etc. Not that that really matters, because we're not talking about a high tolerance, high precision use here. You know, we're putting it into plastic. It's all a bit rough, and I'll go into that in the detail in a moment. But what I'm worried about with these is this. Look, that there is rust. The one that I've taken off. That tells me liquid gets near these bearings. Now these are sealed bearings. These are sealed bearings. These are technically sealed bearings, but they're just shielded, which means the lubrication's inside them, and you don't want it coming out because you can't put anything in there. And the worst thing that can happen to a bearing is the lubrication gets washed out and it becomes absolutely useless. So I feel like these are the wrong spec, and we should have the 2RS bearings in there. Now that actually I found the 2RS bearings cheaper than these, and I found I'll put a price up for what I got them for, so I can't remember off the top of my head. I'll have to check, but I got 8 bearings because that's obviously 2 for each wheel, and I think I didn't even pay a tenner for them. But I'll put it on the screen just to verify that. Now to put them back in, you simply do this in reverse. But first of all, you've got to get your washer. Should clean it if you want, really. Get it all nice and tidy. So on camera, I don't want people saying I'm a rough git. But it don't really matter too much because the sealed bearings and this washer's going to do nothing except get dirty again anyway. The washery thing in the back there, and that's got to go in. Now what you don't want to be doing is getting your drift and starting putting it on here and hitting the inner race, because the inner race will bang into the bearings and then the bearings will bang into the outer race and you've already damaged them. What you want to be doing is, if possible, is making all your impact happen on that outer race, because that's the way you should be doing it. Now what I've found is with my 19mm socket sits on there nicely, and so if I put that on there and strike downwards, because the middle is all empty and it's all chamfered away, I'm only actually hitting the outer race. So as long as I make sure I'm nicely square on there, and I'll try and start it by hand if I can. You don't want it to be too wonky, because it's plastic. Sometimes you'll get away with starting it by hand, and I've started it by hand. And then each time I hit it, I'm just making sure that the socket is bang on position again. Eventually, again, if you do this on a harder, firmer surface, it'll go in easier, but I'm doing this on this table because I want you to be able to see what I'm doing. All of a sudden now, see, that is inside. It's inside the groove. It's below the recess. It's recessed, so that can't move now. So now I can just be a little bit more positive. Hit it a few times to make sure it's right against that stop. And you can see there's no damage whatsoever been done to that rubber. We are away. So then we can flip it over on the other side. Just remember again, put our little washer in. Get him in there. Get our bearing out. Tap him in, just the same. See what I mean? You can push these in by hand because of the plastic. Because you're pushing it into plastic, not metal. Not always, some of them will be tighter than others, I imagine. Now, a point of note, is that on the outside, or the side of the wheel that faces outwards, which is the nice smooth side, not the side with all the little recesses in, the bearing is a little bit more recessed, as in it's further inside the hole than it is on that side. So you don't think, oh, this has got to go down further. You'll know if it's in the right place, because it'll just stop moving. Okay, and that is how you get the bearings in, and you can, you know, even though I said it wasn't that free running, I can feel, you know, that is lovely free running, isn't it? Now then, let me just show you the next stage. The next stage is we're going to put it back onto the shaft. So it went in like that. So you want the outside piece facing outwards, the inside piece facing inwards. Now, when I was taking this apart, all I had was, I've got 2 extra of these, and I don't know why that is. I don't know if I think the previous owner must have changed the bearings at least once. Maybe he's put some in there shouldn't be. So if anyone in the comments knows if there should be a washer against this face or against this face, say something, because I don't know. So that just butts up against there, and then you've got a nylock nut. What I mean by that is there's nylon in there so that it locks. And I'm going to do this by hand just because I can hold this in my hand here. And I can just tighten it up. Now what you're going to find is it will spin nicely. And then suddenly it just gets a bit tighter. Right, now that's intrigued me, because when I was doing that with the old bearings, if I over tighten that, the wheel would seize up. Which tells me the old bearings were worn. Because that now is lovely and that's tight. I can't justify tightening that any more than that. You have to go ridiculous, because the nylon will stop it coming undone anyway. And there's hardly any movement in it that way. So that's lovely. So all you got to do for that is repeat the process for the other front wheel, which I'm not going to do with you. You can just rewind and watch that again if you want to. What we'll do is we'll look at the back axle next. Right guys, just a couple of days later, and I thought I better add this little bit into the video before I post it. It did seem odd to me that you could see these bearings, especially with them ZZ bearings in there, where, like I said, you can wash the lube out of them quite easily, and there's real easy access there for water to spray into it. When I looked online, I realised that these should actually have caps on. Obviously, the previous owner of my trolley has lost them, and I looked at a couple of the anglers that were fishing at the weekend that had these trolleys, and quite a few of them have lost them as well. So you can buy those caps for replacements, and I would say they're quite important if you've got the ZZ style in. You can get away without them with these R2s, but if you've got the ZZ style bearing in, definitely get them. What I've done is 3D printed me some, because it's just easier for me to do that and cheaper. That costs me virtually nothing, as opposed to spending £8 and getting some at post and having to wait ages. So I've got some caps that just pop on there like that, and I'm happy with those. So that's me sorted. But I just thought I'd add that, because there'll be people that have got these trolleys and gone, oh, he hasn't mentioned anything about that, or you know, they're not going to get the water washed out of them because they've got this cap on, which is true for this bearing, but not true for that bearing. That bearing's still exposed, so. And the one on the axle exposed both sides, so I still stand by saying that these rubber seal bearings are going to be better. Right then, I've got the back axle. I'm holding the phone in my hand, so I can't do it all together. But what you basically want to do is loosen that off, loosen this one off, and then take the whole back axle out as one. Which you can't do one-handed, because obviously it's going to be a bit of a wiggle, because sometimes it's tight. So you might have to wiggle one side and the other side. But what I'll do is take the whole thing out as an assembly. So you'll get this piece, the shaft, and that piece. And I'll put them on the table now, and you'll see when I've got them off. But I can't, like I said, I can't do it on camera because I've only got one hand. Right, so we're back with the assembly of the rear axle. Now, what you've got with the rear axle is this axle actually goes all the way through, and it's got a thread on the end there, and it goes all the way through, it's got a thread on the end there. So this is a spacer, this is a spacer. These two spacers, or these look like sleeves that have been welded on, just to give the wheels location so they don't move up and down the shaft. So what can happen is if you start loosening that side, all of a sudden the whole thing can move, because once that gets loose, the shaft can just twist. So there's a bit of a flat in the middle here that you can hold with the spanner, or an adjustable, or whatever you want. What size that is actually. I'm going to say it's quite small. Let's have a look. 10mm perhaps. Might be 8mm that. So I might have to get my other spanner set out. Got it to hand, yeah. They are 8mm. So 8mm fits on there nicely. If you've got an adjustable, you can use that as well. So 8mm, and Again, 13mm socket, exactly the same. So what I'm going to do is just do one side. So we'll do, can you see this side on the camera yet? So we'll do this side. So these I'm loosening, and then we hold that in the middle, just loosen it off. It's not super tight because I've had this apart already. I've actually had the bearings out of this and put them back in, the old ones. I'm only put them back in so that I can show you kind of how to do it. So take that off completely. Then when you slide, you can see this in the light, but when you slide this off, this space is going to come with it, and the space is not, you know, it's not fixed in place. So just be careful that you don't lose it. And the next spacer comes off. That's the bigger one. So the smaller, you'll know which one's which because the smaller one fits between there, so you can't get it wrong. And then that slides off just like it did the back. Really, really simple. So we'll take that out of the way because this, again, we've just got to repeat the process for the other side. Then we've got to get our drift again and just get on the back of that washer and start knocking that bearing out. These are going to come out reasonably easy because I've had them out in and out a few times. You might find you've got a tighter one. I'm going to, and then turn it over. Alternate sides, remember, because you don't want it to come out wonky, because you've got plastic. If you get it out wonky, it can then, it's not coming out square, then it'll gouge into the plastic and it just makes it a bad, you know, not such a nice fit for your new bearings, with replacement bearings. So you can see these bearings definitely had better days. That one's actually seized up a little bit. Where the washers went. Maybe that's why I had 2 spare washers, because it was for those 2. It's like I said, I took it apart and rebuilt it, so that's probably what it was. Let me find my washers. Right, I'm back again. I found my washers. That explains what happened there. So give them a clean, wash her in, get your new bearing. Same process as before really, but we'll do it again for you. This is the important bit to get right. Bearings. Right, I used to work as an engineer, and I used to be a maintenance engineer, so I was responsible for the reliability of equipment. And bearings are obviously something that you want to keep reliable. Now, bearings reliability doesn't change over time as much as people think it does. It's pretty much a consistent chance of failure is pretty much the same all the time. But what causes premature failure, which is the biggest issue with bearings, is using the wrong bearing in the wrong environment, or exposing the bearing to forces that it's not supposed to be exposed to, or beyond its capacity or its range. And the worst thing of all bearings is letting them run out of lubrication. So go back to what I said a second ago, you do not want to strike this bearing in a way that might damage those balls that are in there. And by hitting this in a race, you've got the inner race, then the outer race, and then the ball in the middle. And if you hit the inner race, it moves, it bangs into the ball, and then the ball bangs into the outer race. Whereas if you hit the outer race, the inner race is just loose, so it can do what it wants, because nothing's restricting the movement of the inner race in this scenario. Right, so let's just put this in, and remember what I've said. Make sure you're not hitting the inner race, or you're not hitting this rubber piece. Get yourself something that's nice like that. That's really loose, that one. Really, really loose, that one. Nice and straight in. Not loose enough to be worried about, but looking at it, look, it's not down. So it is quite loose. Look, it's going to fall out, but luckily it'll be held in place by it is looser than I want it to be, but it'll be held in place by the nut, and the nut will hold it all in place so it won't come off. This is the downside of having plastic, you know, you're putting metal pieces against plastic, and it just can't keep, it doesn't like being, it does not like being interfered with. so it's not, the bearings are not different in dimension. Make sure that's down. Yeah, happy that that's down. Then we can put it back onto the shaft. So let me make some room and I'll bring it back in. So here's the shaft back in, or the axle. You've still got this side on, which is great, because if you do get confused, you can see that what goes where. But really it's dead simple. Wheel first, again, holy side internally. So that holy sides point to the holy side and the smooth sides point outwards. And then you want the big spacer. Spin it round. You want the big spacer. And then you want the little spacer, but and this on together. They go in like that. Now what you've got to be careful of is that can go on like that, or it can go on like that. So you've got to make sure it's the same way as this side. So it's this way. It's another reason, you know, it doesn't matter, you know, but as long as they're both the same, it doesn't matter. But another reason just to leave them doing one side at a time. And then you've got to find your nylock nut, which you've lost, John, because you're useless. There we are. And again, you want to use this spanner, because particularly when you're doing the next side, you're going to get this just tight. You don't want to interfere with it. Because this shaft moves, you can start trying to turn this end and then twist the shaft and end up tightening this side up more than you want to tighten it up. You don't want to do that. You want to tighten each side up independently. See, this time the bearing's done what it's been doing, which is, if you over tighten it, they just get a bit too tight. So just loosen them off a little bit. Sorry. So you can see how freely that's running. And then what I tend to do is spin it and then just tighten it until it just catches like that. See it, just stop it. And then you might want to just back it off a little bit. Back it off a little smudging, so you've still got the free running, and that's as tight as you can get it. You'll have a little bit of wiggle in it. If you want to take the wiggle out, you can, but you're loading the, as soon as you do that, you're loading them bearings a little bit. That's the limit. What's happening is you've got two bearings opposite one another like that, and you're tightening these inner races towards one another, and the outer races stay where they are, and you end up like loading one side of the bearing, and the insides of the bearing get loaded, and you're just going to create premature wear. So it's best just to have that little bit of wiggle. Make sure it's nice and free running. Whatever you're happy with, I'm going to just go a little bit looser. That's nicer. So if it's that, then you know the bearings are not under too much friction. Okay, and we'll do the same again. So I can show you that on this side again. See, this has got old bearings in at the moment, but if I tighten, put my spanner on, tighten this up, these old bearings, see, straight away it locks the wheel up. You've got no wiggle in that at all, because you've taken all the play out of the bearings. If you think about it, it's got to have some play in it, else it can't move. Slacken it off a tiny little bit and it's lovely free running, but there's a little bit of wobble in it. That's fine. That's getting as tight as you can without ruining your bearings. So I'm going to change these bearings on this side because I'm changing them all anyway. I'm going to do that off camera. I'm going to do the other one. That's all four done. Thanks for watching, guys. Right, guys, switched you back on while I do this last front one. I've just done. I'll finish the rear axle off and just finish this last front one. Now I know a lot you're going to look at this and go, well, you could have cleaned it, John, before you did all this, or you could have, you know, tied it up a bit more or whatever. But the reality is, Probably going to do more with this than I've currently just done. And I'll probably take it all apart again, but I just wanted to do the bearings as a separate video because I felt like there'll be people out there that just want to know how to change the bearings and not necessarily interested in whatever games I get up to with modifying the other one or doing it up or whatever. Whatever I'm going to do to it yet, I don't know. But so that's why I've not bothered cleaning it all up and tidying it all up. You know, I'll probably do something with it at some point in the not too distant future in that sense. I don't think I've just like gone, oh, I can't be bothered. That's just not how it is. So think about how you use this bearing here. Look, this bearing here, the shield's come off him, and you can see there's no lube in there. It's dry. That's what I'm saying. Like, if that's like that, then it's very quick for the bearing to wear out and die. You want to make sure nothing gets in there. Maybe you pressure wash your trolley down every now and again, where you're definitely gonna get. I wouldn't advise pressure washing even a sealed one directly, but you're probably not directly doing it, but a bit of splashing, a bit of overspray or whatever. Whereas with that shielded one, that would be a problem. The splashing and the overspray will wet the bearings. I used to work in a place that was a food manufacturer, and the machines used to get washed every night by I was going to say uneducated, but that's not the right word. Untrained, unknowing employees who doing what they thought was best, but actually, you know, they were just hammering caustic solutions into bearings, and we'd go through bearings like they're going out of fashion. And I'd get under pressure from people in other departments to spend more of my budget and spend on more expensive bearings, because then we wouldn't keep having issues all the time. But I tried to point out to them multiple times that it doesn't matter if you put the world's most expensive bearing in. If you wash all the lubricant out of it, it will die very quickly. And so it was much better to put the cheap ones in and just keep replacing the cheap ones, because they wouldn't stop their behaviours. Because I could just, you know, it was just cheaper. And if you get the best bearing going and just wash all the lube out of it, it's just the same as a crap bearing, so it's pointless. There we are. Another one done. So if you're looking to do this, maybe give the rubber seal ones a go.